I have studied the Stiles family in Georgia and the Southeast for about 25 years now. I think I've rounded up every little branch and section of the family, and Rebecca comes from the African American branch. It's a wonderful story of a family that was dedicated to education and property and the betterment of themselves.
What I know about Aunt Rebecca is that she was very educated. She was somewhat like the Martin Luther King of her day. She was an advocate for women's rights. And she was the type of person that, like E.F. Hutton, when she spoke, people listened.
I knew her from way back. I heard the name Rebecca Stiles Taylor. I had heard so many lovely things about her, and I wanted to be a part of those lovely things.
I think Rebecca's main drive came from probably being raised with a good number of brothers and sisters. Something tells me she was the dominant one that would have taken on many of the responsibilities.
And she demanded, "Have you served breakfast?" I said, "No, we're just getting up. What would you like?" "Bacon, eggs, and grits." So off to the kitchen while I comforted her. Finally, I thought it looked real pretty. I had the bacon all nice and crisp, and I brought her the plate with these 2 slices of bacon, a serving of eggs, and grits. And she looked at it, she said, "What is this? You don't have any bacon?"
She did get her education here in Savannah at the Beach Institute and then at Atlanta University. And there, in this traditional black college setting, she picked up that zeal to go back and to be a missionary teacher to the young folk there. I think they taught her the power of her own voice and her own drive. And from there, she was on her own, and she was a force to be reckoned with.
Well, she was very, very active with our civil rights. We didn't call it that then. Very interested in things that were being denied a race of people. She was an educated woman, and she made it a point to keep informed and to know what was happening, not only in her recent surroundings, but in the country and in the world.
This remarkable woman started out as a school teacher in our largest African American public school in Savannah, but a school that was underfunded, that had to run 3 and 4 sessions to get children going. And this woman not only was teaching, she's working as a social worker.
She was an educated woman, and she was interested in education and the betterment of mankind. Not only interested in people, but mankind in general.
Her other hat was her work with the Colored Women's Clubs. Through her chapter, she was able to influence local policy and to raise money to fill in many of the voids for Savannah's African American citizens.
After organizing the Savannah chapter of the National Association of Colored Women in 1918, Rebecca Stiles Taylor became the first president. She joined Mary McLeod Bethune in 1919 to organize the Southeastern Region National Association of Colored Women, serving as corresponding secretary and president of the Georgia State Federation.
She worked with the Organization for Colored Women in Savannah. She started the movement for an old folks' home and a school for girls.
Rebecca's work with the Women's Club started when she edited the state newspaper for the Colored Women's Club, and she ran a regular column of club news. This would have been anything about what's happening with the clubs, but she chose in the second half of her columns to editorialize. This state newspaper for the Women's Club lasted for a couple of decades, and then it could no longer publish. It was just too expensive. And it was at that juncture, in the late 30s that she got a call from an old friend in Savannah, and that was Robert Abbott, who was running the Defender newspaper in Chicago. And this was a fascinating newspaper, an African-American organ that was read throughout the South.
She was the only, they called the mixed blood. She was mixed blood. And during those days, they were called mulattoes. But she was the first African-American to write for the Chicago Tribune. She was a first in a lot of things.
I think that I had always had ears for her. And I think that whatever she said made an impression.
The photograph is the Toussaint Louverture chapter of the American Red Cross, one of the creations of Rebecca Stiles Taylor. She was the organizer, she was the person in charge, and in the photograph you see her front and center.
When the soldiers were returning from war, she was displeased with their reception, and I think that was her main motivation to get these women to come together and protest and form an organization. One thing led to another. That was a springboard to getting other things done.
Rebecca ended her career in Chicago. She had been married in the 1920s to Mr. Taylor, and that marriage did not last. It did end in divorce. But in her later years, she did marry a Reverend Dodson in Chicago and made her life around him.
Well, I remember that she was married twice, and apparently she was so aggressive that the marriages didn't last too long.
She was talented, she was smart, she was aggressive. She knew what she wanted and she knew exactly how to get it. Even if it did seem like she was demanding and aggressive. But I think that is the personality that got her as far as she accepted.
The wonderful thing about Rebecca Stiles Taylor is we have a natural leader in this woman, an African American that made a difference in an era when African Americans couldn't make a difference.
She was quite a woman, and I think she deserves it. And I'm glad that I was able to play a part in it and helping to make it happen. And I thank the society for doing that.